Chamber has sustained this legacy thanks to our dedicated volunteers and our member organizations who understand the importance of thanking our military families. I hope you've had a chance to enjoy the great events that have been taking place over the past week, celebrating all ages, all ranks, and commands that make up San Antonio's military presence.
Good evening, all of you. Very special indeed, and thank you so much. We're so excited and very pleased to be a part of tonight's Spirit of America dinner in tribute to the U.S. military. My name is Mario Ariz, and I'm with a federal agency known as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It's part of the Department of Homeland Security. And here in San Antonio, we have probably the largest, the most active military naturalization program in the country. And each month, an average of 45 active military members become new citizens in administrative ceremonies just like the one tonight. Many people outside of this room do not know that some in the military service are not yet United States citizens. In fact, an executive order was signed in 2002, and since then, 92,000 members of the military have become U.S. citizens since that time. We're so proud of that. And here at Lackland, we have a special program that was implemented a couple of years ago that identifies non-citizens recruits and works with them to achieve their citizenship prior to graduating from basic training. So we're extremely privileged to be around the military every day here in San Antonio, and quite honored that tonight you too can witness the power and the emotion of what it means to become a U.S. citizen. So with us here today is Airman First Class Archel Castro, along with his supervisor, Staff Sergeant Levon Tucker. What a thrill this is for me. It really is. So Airman First Class Castro immigrated with his mother and his sister at the age of 16 from the Philippines in August of 2007. He lived in New York, where he graduated from high school, and he joined the United States Air Force in December of 2012. He is currently assigned to Randolph Air Force Base as a personnel specialist. So I'm very, very pleased if you could help us we will administer the oath of renunciation and allegiance. This is a very special moment for Airman Castro. Sir, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I hereby declare.
I hereby declare.
On oath.
On oath.
Could you raise the mic? On oath.
On oath.
That I absolutely and entirely.
That I absolutely and entirely.
Renounce and abjure.
Renounce and abjure.
All allegiance and fidelity.
All allegiance and fidelity.
To any foreign prince.
To any foreign prince.
Potentate.
Potentate.
State or sovereignty.
State or sovereignty.
Of whom or which.
Of whom or which.
I have heretofore.
I have heretofore.
Been a subject or citizen.
Been a subject or citizen.
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend.
The Constitution and laws.
The Constitution and laws.
Of the United States of America.
Of the United States of America.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I will bear arms.
That I will bear arms.
On behalf of the United States.
On behalf of the United States.
When required by the law.
When required, when allowed.
That I will perform.
That I will perform.
Non-combatant service.
Non-combatant service.
In the armed services of the United States.
In the armed services of the United States.
When required by the law.
When required by the law.
That I will perform work of national importance.
That I will work
perform work of national importance
in
the armed services of the United States
or
under civilian direction when required by the law. And that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Ladies and gentlemen, our newest United States citizen. This is a special moment for Airman Castro. I don't know if you want to say anything to this audience, but you're certainly welcome. You deserve it.
Please. Good evening, generals, admirals, high-ranking members of the United States Armed Forces, and fellow compatriots. I would like to take this very moment and thank everyone who is here tonight for giving me this honorable opportunity to share this ceremony and represent the United States Air Force. By receiving the certificate of naturalization, I stand before you this evening not just as a member of the United States Air Force, but as a naturalized citizen of this prominent country. America. To me, this naturalization represents freedom to which this country was built upon and what it stands for: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By becoming a citizen, I've inherited a great deal of responsibility to defend the Constitution of the United States and represent freedom to which we all stand and fight for. To me, this means that I can, with deep devotion to duty, now stand side by side with my fellow wingmen and serve honorably and set my gaze into that wild blue yonder and say loud and proud that I am an American airman. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank my direct supervision at AETC, my direct supervisor, Staff Sergeant LaVon Tucker. And thank you very much for having me tonight, and may you all have a wonderful evening.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Please be seated. Airman Castro, welcome home.
It has been said that we will remain the land of the free so long as we continue to be the home of the brave. And these are the men and women who set the standard for commitment, conviction, and courage, not just for the soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen of their commands, but also for us here at home as well. Please join me once again in thanking them all for their service. I'd like to introduce our next commenter for the evening. When I got the speaking notes for this evening, there was about a paragraph, and I looked at it and I went, there's got to be more to this guy than that. Richard pointed out very early that he was a Marine, which says volumes in and of itself. But Mr. John Now is the president and CEO of Silver Eagle Distributors, which is the nation's largest distributor of Anheuser-Busch products and one of our presenting sponsors for CAM. John leads more than 1,200 employees, serving accounts throughout 16 counties in Texas, and that's no small area, with operations in Houston, Conroe, Cypress, Rosenberg, and here in San Antonio. As a Marine and as a graduate of the University of Virginia with a history degree, in doing the little bit of research that I did on him, I saw an example of someone who truly loves this country, loves the history of this country, and truly understands the meaning of civic involvement. I'm going to read just a small portion of all the things this man has been involved with in his philanthropic activities. He's been vice chairman of the National Park Foundation Board of Directors. He's been with the Civil War Trust Board of Directors and is their chairman emeritus. He's with the Baylor College of Medicine Board of Trustees. Sick 'em Bears, number 6. How about that, folks? He's with the Gilder Lerman Institute of American History Board of Trustees, an honorary trustee of the Texas Heart Institute, an honorary state trustee of the San Antonio Parks Foundation, with the advisory council member to the Center of Big Bend Studies. He's with the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission, the Admiral Nimitz Foundation, the Texas State Historical Association. He's been chairman of the Capital Campaign for the Center of Texas Cultural Heritage and chairman of the steering committee for the proposed Lone Star Coastal National Recreation Area. In addition, John was appointed by President Bush to serve as chairman of the National Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and he is the founder and president of the Now Foundation. And he still manages to find time to sell us a beer. Ladies and gentlemen, John has traveled in from Houston to be with us tonight, so please join me in a big round of applause for John and Silver Eagle.
Told him to cut it short. Well, Tom, thank you very much, and thank you for putting together this wonderful evening. Good evening to everyone. It is an honor for me to be here and join you for the Spirit of America dinner. What a great gathering of government officials, business leaders, but most importantly, all of the military personnel represented here this evening. A bit of a moment here to thank the San Antonio Greater Chamber of Commerce for the work you do for our city and our region and for organizing this incredible 11-day military celebration. So I want to take a personal moment to thank Richard Perez and the staff. Richard, I don't know where you are, but great job, man. We're here in this celebration to pay tribute to the men and women of our nation's military. As you've heard, I'm a former Marine. I recognize and appreciate the important sacrifices that our military make every day, not just those in uniform, but their families. They do it around the world, and they do it 24/7. They do this to ensure our nation's security and allow us to continue to live in a country that embraces and defends freedom and democracy. Once again, Silver Eagle Distributors is proud to join with Walmart to honor our country's dedicated armed forces as a presenting sponsor for San Antonio's Celebrate America's military effort. And I'm proud to be here tonight. At Silver Eagle, we believe in hard work, we believe in teamwork, and most importantly, we believe in going above and beyond our everyday job and commit and serve our community. And this, most importantly, here in San Antonio, means supporting the military. And how do we do this? Well, we're proud to support the men and women who wear our uniforms. Throughout the year, we sponsor and participate in not just this event, but the Chamber's Stars and Stripes over San Antonio, the July 4th celebration, the Folds of Honor Foundation, Project Mend, Hope for Heroes, and the Fisher House Foundation. And one that I'm particularly proud of, and we've had to do this a number of times, when one of our employees' unit is activated and he or she goes on active duty, we equalize their pay to the military pay level up to what they had been earning at the company. It is, I would say, a challenge to all of American business to recognize that level of sacrifice if we don't equalize their pay. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the senior Army representative here tonight. Each year, this organization selects a branch of the military to serve as the host coordinator for our CAM events. This year, the Army has admirably filled this role, and we are fortunate to have with us Lieutenant General Patricia Horoho. She's with us tonight. General Horoho is currently serving as the 43rd Surgeon General and Commanding General of the U.S. Army Medical Command. She's a registered nurse. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I told her, since I came from the University of Virginia, it was kind of a unique experience for me to be introducing a Tar Heel, which, by the way, we're playing this weekend. That makes it even worse. A Master of Science degree as a clinical trauma nurse specialist from the University of Pittsburgh, and is a resident graduate of the Army's Command and General Staff College and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. Her awards and decorations include Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, and many other service and unit awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General Horoho to the stage.
Good evening, everybody. And go Heels. No, I'm just teasing. It's wonderful to be able to share this evening with everyone, and it really is the Armed Forces' opportunity to thank our community leaders. And so for the San Antonio business community leaders, for the commerce of San Antonio, thank you all for what you do each and every day in making a difference. A special thank you for Tom Rogers for 2 years of really supporting, or I think 3 years of supporting this and making such a big difference. We appreciate your leadership. And Richard Perez and I, too, don't know where you are, but thank you very much. Right there. Okay. Thank you so much for your leadership and the difference that you make, not just for these events, but the difference that you make every single day. Thank you very, very much. And to the Silver Eagle distributors, as well as Walmart as our sponsors, these events that everyone has been able to enjoy would not be possible without the support, but it really is the support that you give our armed forces and our service members and our veterans every day throughout the year. So thank you all very, very much. If we could give a big round of applause. San Antonio has the nickname of being the military city. And I think you can see that just by the turnout tonight, but I think you can feel that presence every single day. We've been a nation at 12 years of war, and the San Antonio community has really wrapped their arms around our warfighters and their family members, and have been there to support our wounded, ill, and injured, in which that we could never say thank you enough. This is a community that really looks at the Armed Forces service members as part of their community. And so whether it's the river parades that we see, whether it's the dinner events and all the other community activities, this is an area that does things big. And so when you look across the United States, usually you'll see Military Appreciation Day. When you come to San Antonio, it's Military Appreciation Week, and then they extend it to another week. So it's that Texas size doing things big. So only in Texas can you do that. This community, which I've been so proud of, an event that they did last year. Last year, they were the very first city in the United States to be part of the partnership to recognize our Vietnam veterans and to welcome them home. And I'd like to share a little personal story, because the impact of what that event did is really an impact that's felt across the United States. In the February timeframe, I was in Arizona at one of the conferences, and we had leaders across many of the universities. And I just happened to meet a gentleman who introduced himself, and we were talking, and I think because I was in uniform, he said, I served in Vietnam. And I don't know why, but I looked at him, and I said, thank you so much for your service, but more importantly, welcome home. And his eyes filled up with tears, and he said it was the first time since returning from Vietnam that anybody welcomed him home. What you did last year by having 1,000 Vietnam veterans being welcomed home and recognized and cheered and applauded for their service has allowed the healing journey for many. That's what this community does, and that's what's so important, and that's why we're so appreciative to be part of the Armed Forces and being able to call San Antonio our home. It's been the home of Army medicine since 1947, and it's now the home of military medicine because we have the Military Education Training Center that trains our Army, our Navy, our Air Force, and our Coast Guard with over 60 programs. So we are a community that is continuing to grow and really focus on the armed services. So as the Surgeon General, I'm extremely proud to call San Antonio the headquarters of Army medicine, but more importantly, I'm very proud to know that I'm part of a tri-service community that could look at our community leaders and know that you provide support. So what I would ask is for every military member, if you could stand, and then I'd like us to give a big round of applause for our community leaders to say thank you. Thank you all very much for all the celebrations that have occurred over this last week, and we have more to go. And thank you very much for being patriots that make a difference and make us each proud to be part of the United States of America. God bless.
General Horoho, thank you so much for those remarks and for the support the Army has shown as our military coordinator this year during CAM. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Drostata. I serve as the market manager in the San Antonio area for Walmart, and we're proud again to be in our 9th consecutive year as a presenting sponsor. At Walmart, we are thankful for the service and sacrifices of our nation's military men, women, veterans, and their families. And we believe that every day is Celebrate America's Military Day. While we can never repay the sacrifices our veterans have made, I am proud to be a part of a company and a community that supports our active military men and women and their families and our veterans in every way we can. We as well appreciate the efforts of Richard Perez and the entire chamber for their recognition of the need to set aside time to honor those who serve our country. To Tom Rogers, Mike Rowland, Will Garrett, and the entire Military Affairs Committee as well, we thank you for the behind-the-scenes efforts that make these events possible. Again, on behalf of the entire Walmart family, I want to extend my sincerest thanks and appreciation to our military. The freedoms and opportunities each of us have would simply not be possible without the sacrifice you so unselfishly provide. And now it is my pleasure and distinct honor to introduce our special guest tonight and our keynote speaker, General Robin Rand. General Rand is Commander, Air Education and Training Command, Joint Base San Antonio-Randolph, Texas. He is responsible for the recruiting, training, and education of Air Force personnel. His command includes the Air Force Recruiting Service, a numbered Air Force, and Air University. AETC trains more than 293,000 students per year and consists of 12 bases, more than 67,900 active duty reserve, guard, civilians, and contractors, and 1,369 trainer, fighter, and mobility aircraft. General Rand was commissioned in 1979 after graduating from the U.S. Air Force Academy. He's had multiple flying tours, served as an air liaison officer with the U.S. Army, and has had staff tours on the Joint Staff, Office of the Secretary of Defense, and Air Staff. General Rand is a command pilot with more than 5,000 flying hours, including more than 470 combat hours. We're honored to have him with us tonight and excited to have him leading Air Force training in San Antonio. Please join me in giving a big San Antonio welcome to General Robin Rand.
Okay, the bad news is my dog Bogey ate my speech. The good news is Airman Castro is going to come up here and finish for me. How's that sound? I do have to tell you, Peggy, Chief Mackin, I know you had to be pretty proud of that young man tonight, didn't you? Boy, oh boy, am I proud to be an airman today after listening to him give that little talk. What do y'all think? I wanted to tell you that I wasn't nervous about this at all until I walked in and I saw two of my former bosses, okay? And I told Joe Bray, I go, I gotta go and say hello to a couple of my old bosses. And he says, no, you're the boss tonight. I said, it doesn't work that way. They brought me into this world. They can take me out of this world. I would be honored to introduce, though, to my first Fighter Squadron commander from 1985, Lieutenant General retired Steve Polk and Henrietta. Sir, would you stand up, please? I don't know that there's a finer man that I've ever served with, General Polk. It's his fault, okay? However I do, it's blame him. And then I'm filling some pretty big shoes tonight because I'm up here representing someone that served before me who was one of my bosses when I was at Luke Air Force Base. And that's General Bill Looney and his wife, Marilyn. And General Looney, what an honor to follow you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to have a little bit of some prepared remarks, but then I'm going to tell some stories. Is that okay? I fashion myself on being a storyteller. My wife says I'm a BSer, so you get to choose. You can vote. But I want to tell you some stories, and we'll get to that. Before I do, I want to be like many of who have already gone before me and thank the folks, all of you, for being here, number one. But I certainly want to thank the Chamber, and just phenomenal. Wow. Give them a round of applause. You know, when Kim and I arrived at Randolph Air Force Base for the first time as second lieutenants in October of 1980, 33 years ago, we knew we were surrounded by a supportive military community. But I was just a stupid lieutenant. I had no way of knowing just how great you were. But as I look around tonight, I am reminded of what a phenomenal city this is, a military city of the United States of America. Thank you, San Antonio, for what you do. You know, it's not because of the men and women on active duty, our military, our Guard, or Reserve, our wounded warriors, and our veterans. It's because of the San Antonio community and how you treat us, how you make us feel like part of your family, how you embrace us. You see, you can't fake that. And your attendance here tonight as part of the Celebrate America's military festivities is very evidence of that support. Patty, you said it perfectly. It is just heart-rendering, the support you provide us. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank my fellow service soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. You know, I did some math. I think I got it right. November 10th, 1775 was the birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Math in public is dangerous, but I think this weekend they celebrate their 238th birthday. Let's give the Marines a... You know, so many of these fine men and women have been carrying a tremendous burden these past 12 years. And I'd be remiss if I failed to mention the debt of gratitude we owe them and their families. let me set the stage for you. Right now, as we sit in this marvelous comforts of this room, enjoying great food, great drink, great fellowship, there are thousands of American warriors serving in some God-forsaken place in the world right now. As Caspar Weinberger described in his book, Home of the Brave, he said, these Americans put on a uniform, kiss their loved ones goodbye, and head out the door to defend our freedoms. In exchange, they ask for nothing, not wealth, not power, not celebrity. And when the spotlight is on them, they fidget uncomfortably and as if somehow they have been given undue attention. Please look around at those in the uniform this evening and look what they're doing right now. They're fidgeting. They're looking down. If you ask them, I promise you this is what they would tell you. I'm no hero. But there are heroes in this room. There are plenty of heroes in this room. Trust me, I've spent almost 4 decades around these band of brothers and sisters, and their words and behavior are not an act of false modesty. They actually believe it. They are not like the rest of us. They are soldiers and they are Marines. They're sailors and they're airmen of our United States military. I want to give them a round of applause also. I want to thank our senior leaders that are here. Patty, thank you so much. One I would like to recognize is Annette Wiggins. She's the spouse to Perry Wiggins, our North. I'm going to talk a little bit about mission and airmen and families. Annette has suffered through 4 serious deployments that her husband has gone on, all in combat. And so, Annette, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the support you provide your husband and our soldiers. So God bless you. And then, like any good commander, I am going to call out one person. Where is my command chief? Tapia, stand up. There he is. Okay, guys, gals, stay standing for just a minute. Chief Tapia is one of the 9 leading senior NCOs in our United States Air Force, and I'm fortunate enough to have him as my wingman. Thank you, Command Chief, for being here. Alice, thank you. Take care of him, okay? Hit him in the kneecap if he starts dozing on me tonight. Originally, General Welsh, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, was going to be your guest speaker this evening, but he is in Washington preparing for a hearing with the Senate Armed Services Committee tomorrow. Trust me, I'm having a much better time than he is. But I am sad. I really was looking forward to him being here, and I was going to listen to him. I'm sorry he couldn't make it, number one, because I'm a terribly poor substitute for our chief. But more importantly, number two, he's simply the most inspiring speaker and man I've ever been around. So guess what? You're stuck with me. But I want to tell you, he did pass a couple words that I want to share. I mean, he passed his warmest regards. I thought it'd be appropriate to briefly share his thoughts on valuing the partnerships we have with our civic communities. You know General Welsh loves San Antonio. And given the climate of constrained resources, he said last week when I saw him, when you're having trouble with resources, when you really need to rely on partners, you hug them closer. You don't push them away. And that's the approach we take, and it just makes sense. So could you bring up my first slide here? What I thought I would do tonight is just kind of talk to you about who I am and what I represent. And, you know, oftentimes I'm asked why I joined the Air Force. Folks, it was a long time ago. I have forgotten, to be honest with you. But I've thought long and hard about the question. I kind of turn the tables and I say I could give you reasons, like many of those in the chairs tonight: education, proud of country, family, want to see the world. But the important question isn't why I joined. I think the more important question is, why have I stayed in? And it's simple for me. It's about our legacy. It's about the mission in my case, that our airmen perform, and it's about the support that the families who support those airmen provide. And that is really what motivates me. Now, if Patty was up here, or Perry was here, or any one of you that serve, you could say the same things that I'm going to talk about tonight about your fellow brothers and sisters in your armed forces, but you're stuck with an airman tonight, okay? So if it's a little airman-centric, I apologize, but I'm so proud to be able to represent all of you tonight. And so I thought I'd just chat a little bit about why I serve. So I'm going to move. Is the mic on? All righty. Legacy Mission Airman Families. That picture on the far left happens to be my pop, Phil Rand. And so I didn't have to look very far to have an appreciation for the legacy. Dad served for 33s through 3 wars, and he is a reminder. And our great mission, our families, our airmen. Next slide. That's a neat picture of what our airmen do today, isn't it? Next. I want to chat a little bit about our legacy. It's personal to me. That picture on the left, I'm sure some of you who are historians would recognize. It's a B-25 taking off what? The Hornet. You know what year it happened in? Who led the raid? Doolittle Raid. You know, by all accounts, that was a tactical failure. In fact, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle thought he was going to be fired or court-martialed. 80 members, none of them made it back home. Many of them lived, but none of them made it back. They were all either captured, killed, and interned for the rest of the war. Some of them made it into China. Jimmy Doolittle says, boy, I blew it, didn't I? But strategically, it was a huge success because for the first time in that war, we let the Japanese know there was no safe haven for them. And instead of being court-martialed, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Why is it personal to me? In 1943, Jimmy Doolittle became the first commander of 12th Air Force. In 2012, Robin Rand became, I don't know what number, but I became the commander of 12th Air Force. This weekend, 4 remaining surviving Raiders are going to gather for their last toast because it started in 1959 from Tucson, by the way. They bought them a good brandy, and they gave 80 goblets, and they put all their names on them. And each year the Doolittle Raiders get together, and every year when one passes, they do what? They turn the goblet over. The surviving members are now in their 90s, and they just can't summon the strength to meet. So this Saturday, they will do their last toast to the fallen Doolittle Raiders. The picture next to them is a mural that was taken when I was in Iraq of the 332nd Tuskegee Airmen. Go ahead and clap. They were an experiment. In this experiment, the Tuskegee Airmen, the 332nd Fighter Group, had the distinction of having the lowest attrition rate of any fighter group in the war of the bombers that they escorted, the lowest. But it came with a cost. 99 Tuskegee Airmen from the 332nd, from 1944 till the end of the war in Europe, were either killed or interned as POWs, 99 over an 18-month period. Think about that. Imagine 99 of us not being here over that period. Unbelievable combat record. And you know what their reward was for that? In 1945, when the Tuskegee Airmen came home, they couldn't go into one of our officers' club and order a beer. Now, I don't say that to shame any of you. I say that as they were the ones that propelled change in our Air Force, our Army, our Navy, our Marine Corps. And if you agree with me that today the United States military is setting the standard in social change, particularly in diversity, I think we owe a great debt to who? those Tuskegee Airmen. And there's a few still left. Kim and I have had the honor and privilege to meet them. But why is it personal to me? Benjamin O. Davis was the first commander of the 332nd. In 2006, the flag that Benjamin O. Davis had in his office, with all the banners that he had earned and his men had earned, sat in my office in Balad Air Base, Iraq. It's personal to me. The guy next to him at the time was an airman named Bill Pitzenberger. Bill Pitzenberger was born in 1944, and he enlisted in the Air Force at 18 years of age in 1962, and he went through, even then, one of our hardest courses. It's called pararescue. And in 1965, he got orders, and he got shipped out to be a pararescueman, and he was stationed at Ben Hoa, Vietnam. And in 1966, two HH-43s were called into action to go help rescue 26 soldiers, Patty, that were in a firefight that had been ambushed. They let Pitzenberger down out of the helicopter. He loaded 6 of the wounded back on the helicopter. The helicopters left. They came back to get them. While they were getting there, hovering, one of the helicopters took fire, said, "We got to leave. Hop into the basket. We'll pull you up." And Pitzenberger waved them off. And instead he stayed. There were 20 soldiers left. And over the next 12 hours, they were in a vicious firefight. 12 more soldiers were killed that night. 9 made it out. Pitzenberger provided as much medical care as he could before a sniper killed him. But when they found him the next day, they found him with a rifle in one hand and a medical kit in the other. Bill Pitzenberger was awarded posthumously, way late I might add, our nation's Medal of Honor. See, that's our legacy. And then next to that, I know General Looney and General Polk and General Brown know this man. It's a statue of Brigadier General Robbie Reisner. Sadly, Robbie Reisner passed away just a few days ago. But what a man. 3 wars. In Korea, he was an ace, a jet ace. Went over to Vietnam in 1965 flying F-105s and was shot down in, believe it or not, in the spring of 1965, but was rescued, got it over the water, they picked him up. Didn't leave. September of 1965, he was shot down again. This time he wasn't so fortunate, and he spent over 7 years of his life in Hanoi. In 1971, Robbie Reisner organized a church service with 46 of his fellow prisoners of war. One of those was a guy by the name of Bud Day. Have you heard of him? Well, that was strictly against the rules. The Vietnamese took great exception to that, and so they hauled him out and tortured him for that. But as he was walking out, Bud Day and the 46th prisoner of war stood up and they sang the Star-Spangled Banner. And later when Robbie Reisner was asked, "How did that make you feel?" he said, "It made me feel so good. I felt like I was 9 feet tall and I could hunt a bear with a switch." What do you think of that? Pretty cool story, isn't it? It's not done yet. See that statue? It's at the Air Force Academy. Guess what height it is? It's exactly 9 feet tall. Would you say a prayer for Robbie Reisner and his family? So I'm real proud of our legacy. It motivates me to try to do right. And it motivates me to try to do right by what our airmen today are doing, and our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines. Next slide. In our Air Force today, the mission part of it, mission airmen families, just like the Army, we have been gainfully employed for the last decade and a half. Tonight, there are people all over the world. We got them in Korea, standing the gap against that ruthless regime north of the 38th parallel. We have them in Afghanistan. We have them flying combat missions. We have them moving cargo. We have them as explosives ordnance disposal crew members. We have them as medics working in some really bad conditions, saving lives. They're all over. I'm really proud of them. I'm really proud of them. Next. I want you to take a look at that picture. This is about airmen, right? This is about air power. What's missing from that picture? There's no airplanes. Why would I do that? I like this picture more than any picture I'm going to show you tonight. Almost. When I get to my grandkids, I like that one more. Where do you think that picture was taken? Any guesses? It doesn't really matter, but it certainly looks like it's somewhere in combat. Would you agree? I can tell you those aren't airmen laying on the ground. Well, who do you think they are? They're soldiers. What time of day is it, day or night? Okay. What do you think they're doing? They're reading, they're resting, they're sleeping. You know, ironically, I didn't know this till I showed this picture on stage. One of the brothers in that picture is the brother to Chief Master Sergeant Staten, who is our 2nd Air Force Command Chief at Keesler Air Force Base. So he validated my story. The reason I'm showing you that is that I don't think those soldiers laying down, sleeping, really know what's happening over the top of them, and it doesn't matter. But I guarantee you the convoy driver, probably the E6 or E7 who was in charge of this, and this was taken in Iraq, and it was a long day, probably about a 3-day journey. They were going from southern Iraq all the way up to the north. He knew, or she knew, that there was air power over the top of them. And they said, dig your foxholes, let's get some shut-eye, let's get some rest. You know what? The Taliban wouldn't do that in the middle of the field, lay down and sleep. Okay? But we would. Why? Because you know over the top of them is a satellite. Someone's doing something, 9,000. There's probably RPAs, remote pilot aircraft, being controlled from airmen outside of Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada, providing them. I guarantee you there's an A-10, an F-15E, a B-1, or an F-16 within close distance of them. There are medics on call if anything should happen. Folks, that is your nation's air power. Okay? Next. But who makes that happen? It's our airmen. So if I could tell, I want to introduce you to some of your airmen. Let me start with the picture on your left. This is a picture of First Lieutenant Jessica Weibel. I met Jessica's family before I met her, and it was a little over about 7 months ago. She was a recent graduate of one of Air Education Training Command's pilot training bases, and she was selected to fly the A-10, and she went to Davis-Monthan outside of Tucson, Arizona for her A-10 training. I just so happened to attend her graduation with my wife, Kim, on a Friday afternoon. Low-key, everyone's in flight suits. They're introducing, and they said, one of our graduates, Lieutenant Weibel, is not here, but her mother and father are in town. I thought that was very strange. How could she have anything more important to do than be at her own graduation from the A-10? And then they said the reason she's not here is she's on an airplane as we speak to join her unit, the 354th Bulldogs, Fighter Squadron, flying out of Bagram Air Base, Afghanistan, to do her first combat tour. Folks, you got to hang with me. A little over a year ago, she was a student pilot, hadn't even flown the A-10. 6 months later, she's flying to go to combat. On her 5th combat sortie in theater. Bad weather, really bad weather. They find a high-value target in a very congested area, and there's only one mode of attack they can use, and that's the Grade A-10's 30-millimeter gun. And there are a few Taliban that regret that Jessica Weibel showed up in theater. See her call sign? She hit the jackpot on her 5th combat mission, okay? I got to tell you about this guy, and I'll go faster. This is my friend Eddie Camacho. It was very powerful to have someone from the Philippines today naturalized citizen in our great country. I met Ed Camacho in a cold winter day, 2007, in a big old tent about 2 in the morning in Iraq, Balad. When I walked in one night, just kind of walking around, I said, "Who's in charge here?" And up popped this Airman First Class. He says, "I am, sir," and immediately, very thick accent. I go, "No, Airman First Classes aren't in charge of anything. Who's in charge here?" And he said, "I am." Okay, I'm hooked. I go, "Where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from Venezuela." I go, "Now I'm really hooked." Venezuela, what is a man, a young man, okay, at 2 in the morning in our uniform, okay, from Venezuela doing in Iraq? It was hard for me, and I said, "Tell me your story." And he goes, "This is a long story." I go, "I got all night." You don't, so I'll make it real short. When Ed was 18 years old, his father came to him and said, "Son, if you want, I've saved some money for you for college. You can take this money and go to the United States, or you can use it to go to college here in Venezuela." Ed's father was going to school in Houston when Eddie was born. So by default, Ed was what? An already American citizen, but he didn't speak any English. Small point. Ed said he wanted to go to the United States. You know why? Back then he wanted to be an astronaut. And he told me that, and I go, "Ed, there's a problem with you wanting to be an astronaut. You don't even have an Air Force commission yet. You know what? You have to go to become an officer. You got to go to pilot training." And he looked at me and he said, I was a general at that time, a one-star. He goes, "General, with all due respect, it's my story. Let me finish it." True story. So I let him finish it. And he came to the United States and he went to Miami, said, "I'll never really fit in. I don't speak English. I have to get out of Miami. I'll be too comfortable." Guess where he went to? Boston. He's the only guy I know that has a Bostonian Hispanic accent that I've ever met in my life. He wanted to go in the Air Force, but he couldn't because he couldn't pass. Those darn recruiters are too hard. But after trying and trying and trying, he got into the United States Air Force. He came here to your great town, and he washed back one class when he started basic training. You know why? Because his language skills were deficient, but he made it. And his first assignment out of tech training was the Aviano Air Base, Italy, and immediately shipped off to Iraq. And I met him. I said, "Ed, that is quite a story. It's so impressive. Do me a favor, write it and send it to me on an email. I'm going to cut it out and put it in my journal." And I have that story today, but I'm not done with it yet. 2 weeks later, his group commander came up to me and said, "Sir, you remember that young man, Airman Eddie Camacho?" I go, "How could I forget him?" He goes, "Well, we got a secret, a little trick we want to play on him." I go, "I'm good for tricks." So we brought him in to my headquarters on a Thursday morning for our staff meeting. Even in combat, you do those silly things. And I told him ahead of time to come brief us on our new uniform we were getting called Airman Battle Uniforms, ABUs, because he was a supply kid. And he shows up. He's going, "You got to be kidding me. I'm going to brief the wing commander and all the colonels in the wing on the ABU." And he starts briefing us. He's got a PowerPoint slide and everything. And I said to him 30 seconds into it, "Ed, do you know why you're here?" He goes, "Sir, I'm here to brief you on the ABU, okay?" I go, "That's not why you're here. You've been accepted to attend the United States Air Force Academy Preparatory School." That was in the spring of 2007. Somewhere along the line, Ed, we maintained contact, and he said, "Sir, if I get through the academy, would you commission me?" And I told him, "I will move mountains to be at your commissioning." And folks, last May of 2012, 15 months ago, my wife and I were there when we commissioned Eddie Camacho. Eddie Camacho is a second lieutenant out Del Rio, Laughlin Air Force Base, pursuing his dream. He doesn't want to be an astronaut anymore. He wants to fly C-17s. You can't win them all, okay? That's why I serve. Next. This guy. Met him for the first time in October 2006. Lebanar Chavez from Hampton, Virginia. 21 years old. He's a defender, Chief Mackin. He's a defender. And his job was to do police transition team. Him and 143 of his wingmen and teammates were to leave the comforts of Camp Liberty and break wire and go into the really nasty, mean streets in downtown Baghdad and teach the local Iraqi how to do basic law enforcement. You with me? That was the easy part. The hard part was getting there. On October 15, 2006, Lee Bernard and his teammates broke wire, 15 of them in 3 Humvees, and they came upon an IED. And Lee Bernard's job that day was to man the 50 cal as they cordoned off the area to do their forensics and make sure people couldn't get out and people couldn't get in. And a sniper shot him right through the forehead. About 24 hours later, I asked, is it okay if I call Mrs. Chavez? And I did. And we had a conversation that lasted 15 or 20 minutes, and regrettably, I don't remember much of the conversation, but I remember how it ended. And she goes at the very end, General, would you do me a favor? I said, ma'am, I will if I can. She goes, this is an easy favor. Would you tell your airmen I'm praying for them? That's why I serve. Next. Another sad day for me. I don't like to be morbid, and I don't like fanfare, but I took that picture because I was told that Staff Sergeant Scott Lilly was going to die. And we knew that his family would probably at some time would want what? Something that they knew that in his last hours, last minutes, that he was surrounded by his wingmen. Scott Lilly was another one of these police transition team members in April 2007. And he too, unfortunately, the demise of an IED that blew up his Humvee and left a big piece of shrapnel in his left lobe. And when I went in to see him, I went actually into the OR. And I remember walking on a Sunday and they're cutting his skull open at Balad Air Base, Iraq, in our hospital. And as I came out, and the surgeon followed me out later, and he said, General, I'm telling you, I'm not God, and I'm not a healer, but I don't think he's going to make it. There's no activity. What we'll do is we'll keep him on life support, get him the launch tool, and we'll allow his family to arrive, and they'll make the decision when it's time. I believed in pin him where you win him, so before we put him on that C-17, we gave him his Purple Heart. Who would have thunk it? Next slide. There's Scott Lilly. So, to Patty and Bill and all our medics, they're not God, but they do miracles. It was a miracle that saved his life, I'm convinced, and his own intestinal fortitude. The picture, a year later, I was at a function. I had no idea Scott was going to be there, nor his parents, and we had a reunion. I asked, his dad said, can you tell me there's this huge gap? What happened? And I said, well, story has it is that he went to launch school after about 3 or 4 days, and there was no sign of recovery, nothing, and that a nurse walked in and was talking to him in a very soothing voice. Scott, if you can hear me, give me some sign. Scott, if you can hear me, give me some sign. And he's laying there, and all of a sudden, up comes his hand, and he gives a thumbs up. And I tell the story, and his dad goes, General, was that nurse a lady? I go, as a matter of fact, Frank, she was. And he goes, was she pretty? I go, I wasn't there, but I was told she was quite attractive. He goes figure. Scott always has a thing for the girls. Guess what? Scott Lilly's no longer in the Air Force. He can't hack it. He will tell you that. He can't hack it. I went to his medically retirement ceremony about 3 years ago. Scott Lilly lives in your great city. He's married and he's got an 18-month-old baby. And he works out at Lackland Air Force Base as a civilian. What do you think of that story? Next. Okay, now we did mission, airmen, families. You got time for a couple more stories? Okay. That picture is a picture of a guy by the name of now Colonel Phil Wheelhauer. He goes by Wallflower. He's the current group commander at the 355th Ops Group at Davis-Monthan, in charge of a lot of A-10s. In 2009, he came home from Afghanistan. And isn't that a cool picture? That's as he got out, bringing his squadron back after an 8-month combat deployment, wife there, children are there. I love that picture. What you don't see in that picture is Val, his beautiful wife. You don't see the baby that she's holding in her arms, do you? That's baby Ryan. Because Phil didn't come home like many of your soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen have been doing for